my wife died 5 years ago, I retired 4 years ago, and I was in this situation. And I said, let's attack this. Let's attack these issues the way we would if we were working for a major company. So the first thing we did was I did a bunch of depth interviews and eventually designed 7 different studies, surveys, eye tracking, content analysis, all the tools that we would use in our normal work. Produce tons of information. I could sit with 200 pages of tables. And these were all mature men, mature women who were widowed and divorced. That's that 16 million figure that you saw up there. And what do you do with all this? Well, of course what you do is you write a book. What else do you do with a book? You write a book. But who the heck wants to read a book about statistics? Nobody. Not even the guy who wrote it wants to read it. So I took the view that we want to do this, but we want to do it with humor and with lightness, even though we're working with a serious topic, a very serious topic, and hard data, because we're working with very big samples, typical samples of 300, 400, 500 people in these particular groups. So I stepped back and was talking about this one day on a golf cart with one of my buddies, and he's a professional writer. And the next thing you knew, we were writing a humorous book, but with serious data. Of course, the other thing that you find very quickly is that the publishing business is weird, and it's getting weirder as these companies disappear. The economics are also very strange. You know, a typical author gets about 12% of the wholesale price of his book. Can't make a living that way. And of course, I was particularly making a living, but it didn't make much sense. So we also found that this thing called websites are pretty fascinating. But out of all this came hiring an ad agency that specializes in the new media. We have a website called suddenlysolo.org, an information site, not a dating site. It's a constantly changing, it's an onion. Just keep peeling it back. It's got lots and lots of information, everything from get out there and get your flu shot to answering questions on sex and relationships. It has videos and stories about people talking about their life experiences. We're only talking about mature people now. We work with 55 and up, and the focus is mostly on people in their 60s and 70s. And the book, well, the book is pretty interesting. It's called Suddenly Solo, a lifestyle roadmap for the mature, widowed, and divorced man. Humorous, cartoons, jokes, life experiences, narratives, a glossary with, from a man's point of view, with things like kitchen. What's the kitchen? It's the place where the beer's kept. Home cooking, eating up leftovers. And it gets into other things that are a little more interesting than that. So, with that as a background, and it's Valentine's Day theme, let's give you a little bit of information. How important is it to be a couple? How important is it we're talking about? Well, it's pretty interesting because both men and women say it's not very important. It's nice, but not very important in today's culture. Because we have a culture that now accepts things like widow and divorce as not negative terms. In fact, divorcee is an almost unheard of term today. It just virtually doesn't exist. These are acceptable states of being in today's world, in today's culture. So, what else do we find? Well, 29% of the men say they really do want a relationship. So that's a pretty big number when you look at that 16 million. So they do want a relationship, and they're out there looking for it if they are pushed. In a way, I have to say, men are bashful. they're not used to socializing in the situations that women are extraordinarily comfortable socializing in. Coffee clutch is not a male term. It's a woman's term. And it's very real. And it's a foundation for women having these close relationships that men do not. Let's see what else we've got in here. I've scribbled down a lot of numbers. Why do they want a social, men, why do they want a social relationship? The number one reason is not sex. They want a relationship because it's someone to come home to. 51% said someone to come home to. 48% sharing life experiences. Sex is in there, but it's not up at the top. It's one of it's part of a total relationship. It's not the reason for the relationship. And you were talking about that before because you were so concerned about sex. To us, it's just somewhere in the mix. It's not the prime reason. So, what are they looking for? It's not BBB, the young, big boob blonde. That is not the mature man's target. That's a media item. You know, that's arm candy. And in fact, what men prefer are mature women, roughly in their own age category. I'm comfortable with that. Brunettes, 47% prefer brunettes, 35% prefer blondes. Slim, intelligent, well-groomed. Those are the characteristics they're looking for. What are women looking for? Because we did interview over 600 women. Sense of humor, number one. Number two, very close, honesty and sincerity. Appearance was way down on the list. By the way, 80% of both men and women said they will not date a smoker. And of course, another 30% said they won't date anybody with facial hair. I mean, I should have a mustache. There's 70% of them.
What was the 80%?
How do they meet? Smoking before about online dating. That's not number one. Number one is dating someone they knew in the past. That is, before they were divorced, before they were widowed. They recontact the cheerleader from high school, who is also. They look for that connected to their past experience. The number two way of meeting someone is online dating. When we saw that data, I didn't believe it. I had to rerun that. I didn't think it was that big. It was 2 years ago when that piece of information came. They use the online, and that is the big source of finding and coupling today. However, there are a lot of reservations, enormous apprehension about dating using online dating. Enormous. 52% of women, 32% of men were very apprehensive of dating online. And what's one of the main reasons? It was a bad connotation. That is, in effect, they gave up in what we would call the traditional ways, and they backed into going online, 32%. Okay, let's talk about sex. No, but it was only we have a 5-stage kind of thing in there, and that's only stage 3. 66% of the women and 82% of men said it is an important part of a relationship. It's not the reason for the relationship, but it is an important part of the relationship. However, there are some disconnects in this. This is one of my favorites. We asked both men and women, how many times do you go out with someone before you consider having sex with them? Men said 3 times. Women said 5. What happens in that little space of 2? How do you keep, a woman meets somebody that's very nice, and but she's not ready to make that move yet. But he's thinking, a peck on the cheek? I mean, we've been out, we've known each other, we're getting along really well. Am I going to drop her and go off and, it's a lot of fish out there. The ratio, by the way, at 65 is almost 4 single women to 1 single man. You don't have to be a handsome, bulging, muscle guy. I mean, a guy like me, and you're going to be able to Don Juan. It's the numbers. It's the numbers that are working for you. It's not really good. So what happens? Okay, we've suggested, and the book has some things. Excuse me. Some things in there on things to do to get over that gap, to get them from 3 to 5. One of my favorites, and I just wrote a column for a publication called Boomer Times, that's in southern Florida, and it suggested that at that 3rd date they said, oh, there's a jazz concert next week on Tuesday. How about if I take you to that jazz concert, or whatever the event is, opera for it. It's a way of getting past that. And there are other things that can be done, and the book suggests that. So there's a lot going on in there. I'm going to stop here. Okay, just tons of data. The book is called Suddenly So. It has lots and lots of interesting things in it. We say it's condiments to condoms. That's the range of things that we try to carry. It's got things like malnutrition avoidance, and it's got other things about dating and steps and care, concerns, the importance, by the way, of using condoms. Both the Palm Beach Post and the New York Times have had substantial stories on the growth of HIV among seniors. It's a serious problem and issue. We try to deal with all of those, both in the book and on the website. The book's on Amazon. It's cheap, but it's got a lot of interesting information, and it is fun to